So here is Mr. Sabharwal, our group CEO.
Hello there, how are you?
Hi Caroline, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Are we ready to start? Are you waiting for anyone else?
No, we aren't waiting for anybody else. We're all good to go.
All right, brilliant. What I'd like to do then is give you the opportunity to tell me what differentiates you from your competition. If you could tell me what to your mind are the key reasons for your success, and also maybe what you feel other people in the industry could learn from your personal experiences, that would be great. So over to you.
All right. So thank you so much for this opportunity, first of all. Secondly, let me go back to the roots to give you a perspective of how we are differentiated from the industry and why we are here where we are today. In 2009, when we started this firm, we came back with a firm belief that the problem identification in agriculture in the Asian markets is wrong. So if I look at the Asian markets and more specifically the Indian market, when we looked at the entire agri value chain, one of the biggest problems was the losses that were occurring post-harvest. So if you look at the dynamics of India, specifically India today, even today, India loses about 10% of its harvest in the post-harvest dynamic chain. And out of that 10%, 7.5% is attributed to the losses being goods kept in warehouses, and yet they've lost their value. Now, all these losses, which if I look at it from an Indian agriculture perspective, add up to a staggering 1 lakh crore. So 1 lakh crore would be approximately how many US dollars, Monish?
45,000.
4.5 billion.
Billion, yeah.
So that's the loss that India annually makes in the post-harvest arena. And the problem was attributed to the infrastructure being available in India. Now, what led us to form Sonlal Commodity Management in 2009 was exactly this. We said that the problem being identified by the industry and the peers are wrong. It's not about infrastructure, it is about how you manage your crops in the existing infrastructure which is available on the ground. And that led to the thesis of formation of this firm, which is where we are today. And just to give you numbers, because I think, Caroline, numbers speak much louder than any words. In India, SLCM today manages 7,903 warehouses spread over 114.68 million square feet of space, managing 2,012.55 million metric tons of commodities. Just to put these numbers into perspective, India's gross domestic produce of only dry agriculture goods is 353 million metric tons. We manage 2,012.55 million metric tons of produce in India. And this is India alone. And we manage this without owning a single square feet of infrastructure. So our infrastructure is the infrastructure that is already available on the ground, which we take on short to long-term leases. And we have developed an agricultural SOP, or you would call an artificial intelligence algorithm, which was presented in 2009, which has over a period of time developed itself because it's an AI, artificial intelligence and machine learning combination, and for which we had applied for a patent as way back in 2013. And I'm very happy and glad to let you know that we've finally received the patent from the Indian government on the 2022, just about 5 days ago.
Yeah.
So after 13 years of rigorous check of that algorithm by our competitors and our peers and the government, finally there is, even after 13 years, that algorithm still stands the test of time, and nobody has been able to dispute the results of that algorithm or that system even till date. So that is going to put a perspective of why we are here, what we are doing. Now, having said so, I think our biggest change in the system is to tell people that you can manage crops agnostic to infrastructure, agnostic to weather pattern, agnostic to the crop itself, and agnostic to any other delta that you would like to say. So people come back and say that it's a mathematical problem wherein everything is variable. And agriculture is about that problem itself, wherein your output is variable, your weather patterns are variable, your geographical destinations are variable, the chronological order in which you speak. So for example, when I'm speaking to you in English, you understand my instructions or you understand this dialogue. But if you go back into the world, while we are operating out of Thailand or we are operating out of Myanmar, the language itself is a barrier. People don't understand instructions if you are giving them an instruction, but the universal language that everybody understands is the science behind it. The universal language of binary, 0 and 1, on which the systems of computers work, is the same language on which some artificial intelligence barriers work, and hence they give you the same consistent results. And that's what Somalal Commodity Management did to agriculture. We broke the agricultural barrier in terms of crop assessment, in terms of crop storage, into a pure math. And the math was defined into an algorithm, and the algorithm tells us how to work. So that's where we are. That's, I think, the biggest change that we brought into the system. And while doing this change, our system has also brought down the losses, which were at 10% to only 0.5%. I think that's the key moot point here. 10% of losses have been brought down to 0.5% without asking any governments or any personal bodies or any corporate body to go and invest behind the infrastructure. So, in other words, Caroline, if you give us some bushels of wheat which are lying on the open ground versus some bushels of wheat which are lying in the underground railway tube of, let's say, London, some bushels which are lying in Regent Park, some bushels of wheat which are lying in the best of the hotels of London, some bushels which are lying in the best of warehouses in India, we have the capability and capacity to manage those wheat or those crops in that location and yet give you tangible, identifiable, replicable, scalable results consistent to the best science available on this earth. That's what we've been able to do. Right? And having said so, what this has done, and when you speak about World Bank and IFC, we are on the panel of World Bank to be precise. IFC actually looked upon our project. We have presented various papers to IFC and World Bank. In fact, we were conducting a dialogue with the World Bank and IFC together to modernize the Vietnamese food chain. And I'm also happy to tell you this, that the same World Bank and IFC has just sponsored a program today. I've received a mail today before coming to this meeting from again IFC, where we are conducting a similar program in Mongolia. And that's going to happen on the 8th of May. So just to let you know how these things are panning out across the world. Now, our success has been based on the fact that we have been able to identify the problem and come out with solutions which are scalable, which are robust, and which are economical in implementation. So we do not have to invest trillions of dollars or billions of pounds to actually upgrade something to give you the results. We can give you the results of whatever machinery that you have on your hand. That, I think, that is the biggest barometer of our success. And while we are talking about these successes, I think it's a very important idea that we add to it the human angle behind it. While SLCM does this in India and in Myanmar and other countries across other countries across the earth, it is very important that we have impacted more than 200 million people while doing so. It's not a small number. We have impacted more than 200 million people while doing or while putting forward our best practices, and that's how we have actually improved the livelihoods of the agriculture fraternity in all the destinations and arenas that we have been working upon. Now, having said so, what we have also done is that we have also educated the entire sector of how to monetize the agricultural commodity and make agricultural commodity into an asset which can be financed, which can be utilized to actually garner your family income. So unlike other fraternities, if you look at how assets like properties and apartments are used as collateral, we ushered in an era in India and Myanmar where these assets which are collateral can be collateralized and against which loans can be dispersed to the holder of that commodity, which means that we have changed the nature of the commodity from being a food commodity to an asset commodity. We've invented a whole new era of financing behind it, which was never there before. So that's another important point. And Caroline, as I said, in the last 13 or 14 years of this group, or rather more than that now, we have kept on adding new junctures to it. One was the science and the culture that we brought into the agri fraternity. We also brought in financial inclusion in this sector. And while we brought in financial inclusion, we actually developed our own non-banking financial company, which was authorized and which was recognized by the Reserve Bank of India, which is equivalent to the London Bank, the London Treasury. So that Reserve Bank of India is equivalent to that as a central bank to India. So we have a registration on the RBI to give loans against such collateralized commodities. So we've brought in a whole sea world of change of how agri fraternity is doing their crops. These crops, and these crops could be anything. You know, we are doing this in Myanmar against livestock right now. When I'm going to Mongolia, in Mongolia we're trying to do this against herds. That herds themselves become livestock, which are then becoming collateral for asset management. So that's the change we brought into the system. As SLCM as a company, we do the entire gambit of agri from farm to fork. So let me clarify what I'm saying. We procure, store, transfer, transport, manage, quality assessment, quality upkeep, and enlarge the gambit of your activities right when the wheat is just one example. We do 960 such commodities. While wheat seed is sown, till the fact that the flour that you consume in your bread is produced and put on your table. We do the entire value chain now. And in the entire value chain, the one thing that we don't do is we don't trade. That's it. We do the entire value chain. So we will do financing, we will do transportation, we will do warehousing, we will do quality checking, we will do quality upkeep, we will do pesticide management, we will do information management, we will do financial management, we will provide finance, we will do the entire chain. And that's what we do as SLCM.
Other people in the industry could learn from your personal experiences, or to word that differently, what have you learned since you've been in the industry?
So I think two things are very important there. I think one, persistence, second, patience, and third also is, I think, the perception. The perception of the problem. This industry has to learn, and we also learned that what people perceive as the problem is not exactly the problem. The perception of the problem is that, you know, India was a backward country or is this third world country. That's a perception. I think India has moved forward from that. The perception was that agriculture has to be managed in a certain way. That perception was wrong. So I think people have to keep their eyes and ears open to the development and science that is happening across the world. There's no one solution that fits all, except there are certain universal solutions, and those universal solutions have to be adapted to the environment where you are practicing those solutions. So as you just rightly said, Carolyn, you are in London, you are facing outages because of storms and so on, there's an electricity problem. That doesn't mean that that problem is only pertinent to London. It is pertinent to a lot of other areas across the world. Now, how Londoners are dealing with those problems and how an Indian deals with the problem might be different. But the perception of the problem is also different now. Whereas the problem in reality is power cuts due to typhoon. That's the problem. The perception could be, hey, in London, the perception could be because the London wiring system is not correct. In India, the perception could be that the generation of electricity is not up to the mark. But the problem is not that perception. The problem is that typhoons are affecting the transmission lines from which the power is being transmitted, right? I'm giving you a live example of what you just told me right now. That's the real problem, whereas the perception could differ. So similarly, that's what I'm saying. I think the biggest learnings I've learned from the industry, and I think the biggest learning which the industry should learn is that please do not mix up your perception or your belief of the problem with the real problem.
I like that, yeah. All right. And lastly, have you got anything coming up for maybe later this year you want the judging panel to know about, or is there anything else in particular you want me to pass over to them for you that you haven't told me yet?
Two important things. One very important is that we have been growing. In fact, from last year to this year, we've tripled our asset under management, and this is coming at the back of a COVID year. So what I'm trying to say is that during COVID, when most of the world was under lockdown, we were one of the companies which was actually doubling up to ensure the food security and the food trade fraternity is fructified and are kind of are safeguarded from the COVID issues. So in COVID, while you and I were working from home, or rather we were working online, the food that is being brought onto your table or the Indian palate's table had to be transported, had to be managed, and those are physical activities. There was no alternative or digital activity for something like that. And it is important that I want to bring out to your August platform is that over the last 5 years, we have been growing at a compounded annual growth rate of about 30 odd %. But between the last 2 years and now, we've tripled our growth. We've tripled our growth. So our asset under management has tripled in the last 3 years. and we have acquired a larger share of the Indian markets than ever before. We are at the highest of our Indian market share today than we were ever before. So that's one important thing that I want to highlight to you. The other important thing is that, as I've said, I'm very proud to share that only 5 days ago, we've received the patent after a 13-year testing of that patent. So what it means is that 13 years, people have tried to poke holes in that patent, to find out ways of saying that whether this works or not. And even in these 13 years, when the world has transformed, social media has transformed the entire manner of how you and I interact. But this patent had stood the test of time. So you can see how solid the solution is. That's the second thing. And the third thing is, I'm also trying to say is that we are also looking forward to another patent that we have also applied 2 years ago, which we believe that we should be getting in the next year. So is the patent which allows you to distinguish quality of any crop, while the crop would be at your dinner table, or it could be at the farmer's field, or it could be at the processor, wherein by the click of a photograph now, you have the ability to decipher the quality of the crop. You don't have to take your crop to a laboratory to test the crops. I'm saying in the next 7 months, we will be making this artificial intelligence quality assessment tool available for commercial use, which allows people, which allows consumers, which allows industrial population to assess the nutritional value of the food with a click of their photograph. Something which has never been done before in the world. And we've applied for a patent of this technology 3 years ago, ma'am.
All right, I've got that down. I did hear the start of that before I disappeared. All right, fantastic. I think everything you've given me has been really, really supportive. I mean, your results speak for themselves. The fact that you've brought losses down from 10% to 0.5, I mean, it's just game changing what you're doing. You're changing the whole industry. Tripled AUM in 3 years. I can definitely see where your shortlisting has come from, especially now I've heard who you've been working with. So yeah, I can really see why you've been shortlisted. What really interests me personally is the human aspect, the impact that you're making. I love to hear about anything inclusive banking, of inclusive finance. I think it is just going to be making such a difference. It's really inspirational to hear what you've done, the way you're educating the industry as well. I think one of the hardest things to do is educate people to do things differently, and you're doing that. And as I said, your results just speak for themselves. So what I'll do